My name is Elise Harper, and I learned, sometimes too late, that in some families, being steady just means being invisible. While my sister Savannah was celebrated as the legacy, the artist, the golden thread weaving the Harper name into the future, I became the backdrop, the dependable one. The placeholder everyone leaned on but never truly saw. I built fences with Grandpa when storms rolled in. I handed him nails before he asked. I earned a full scholarship to Columbia Law, something I once thought might shift the narrative. But at our dinner table, even that became background noise. When Savannah announced her first gallery feature, the conversation shifted before my news had time to breathe. When Dad funded her downtown studio with the family trust, my voice cracked, but never loud enough to matter. And when I overheard him say, "We need Elise grounded. Savannah will carry the name," I realized I'd never truly had a seat at that table. Just a folding chair nearby, easy to remove when inconvenient. But that was before the will. Before Grandpa's final words excluded me in black and white. Before Savannah's fraud unraveled. Before they showed up on my porch, with a teddy bear and tulips, acting like 7 years of silence could be undone with ribboned apologies. This isn't a story about screaming matches or dramatic exits. It's about boundaries, about dignity, about the quiet decision to say, enough. Before I tell you how I rewrote my story, tell me, where are you watching from today? And if you've ever been the invisible one in your family, hit that like button. Subscribe. Because this is for all of us who were never invited to the table, but built our own anyway. That's when I realized I'd never truly been invited to the table. I'd just been seated nearby. The words landed softly, cushioned by the linen napkins and the clink of cutlery, but they cut sharp anyway. I stared at the green beans on my plate like they were suddenly worth studying. Across the table, Savannah beamed as if she'd just been anointed Queen of Colorado. Maybe she had. In our house, being chosen came with parades disguised as polite dinners. Grandpa once told me I was the steady one. We were fixing a fence together, a storm coming in, and I'd handed him nails before he even asked. "You see what needs doing," he said, patting my shoulder. "You're the kind that holds things together." But in this family, steady wasn't celebrated. It was tolerated. Steady meant you could be leaned on, taken for granted, and eventually forgotten. I cleared my throat. "I got something in the mail today." I smiled, tight, hopeful. A scholarship letter, full ride to Columbia Law. Savannah paused mid-sip of her wine, and I caught the faintest raise of her eyebrow before she looked back at her plate. "That's lovely, Elise," Mom said after a beat too long. She offered a smile that barely touched her eyes. Dad's fork clinked against his plate. "Law, huh?" "Yeah." I tried to sound steady, not proud, though something inside me burned to be seen. "I've always wanted to—" "Yeah, that's great," Savannah cut in. "But speaking of letters, I heard back from the Downtown Collective. They want to feature me in their Fall Artist series. If it goes well, I might get a solo exhibition by winter." Mom gasped, hands fluttering toward her heart. "That's incredible, sweetheart." "Phenomenal," Dad added. "Exactly the kind of momentum we need." And just like that, the air shifted. The conversation slid into place like a well-rehearsed dance. Gallery space, branding, investor interest. My scholarship announcement dissolved, folded under the weight of more exciting news. I looked around at the faces glowing with pride and knew my moment had lasted less than 10 seconds. Later, during dessert, Dad leaned back and cleared his throat. The signal. We all quieted. "Your mother and I have decided to officially support Savannah's expansion," he announced. "The trust will front the costs of the new studio space downtown." I didn't look up from my plate. Instead, I pressed my fork into the pie crust until it cracked. The crust flaked in perfect golden shards, unlike the rest of me. "That's amazing," I said. My voice didn't crack. That was something. Savannah looked at me then, her expression soft but unreadable. It'll be good for the family. Harper Studios, it's not just about me. It's a legacy. Legacy. I swallowed mashed potatoes thick with butter and resentment. They stuck to the roof of my mouth, harder to get down than I expected. After the dishes were cleared, I helped Mom in the kitchen. She handed me plates without speaking, her nails still perfect even after handling oven trays. "You should be proud of your sister," she said at last. "I am," I replied. It was partly true. Later, I went to the bathroom to wash my hands. On the way back, I passed the kitchen again and paused when I heard Dad's voice. "We need Elise to stay grounded," he was saying. "Savannah will carry the name." Mom didn't reply. There was only the soft hum of the dishwasher starting. I stood in the hallway, the tiles cold beneath my bare feet. The overhead light buzzed quietly. My fingers curled into fists, then slowly relaxed. In my room, the air was still. My desk was tidy, the envelope from Columbia sitting where I'd left it earlier. I picked it up, unfolded it again. The words were the same. "Congratulations, full scholarship, fall 2012 start." I refolded the letter carefully, edges aligned, and slid it beneath the dresser into a hollow I'd discovered years ago. It wasn't gone. Just hidden. My chair was still warm from dinner, and yet I knew I'd never truly had a seat at that table. But something had shifted. Not loud. Not violent. Just enough. ChatGPT janoi. Ong noi mo lanoi voi toi. Neu toi tung sojat. Banse komot fan trong no. But in the lawyer's office, I didn't even have a sentence. The hum of the fluorescent light above made my skin crawl. The room smelled like processed paper and faint lemon cleaner, the kind meant to sanitize grief into something palatable. I sat on the leftmost chair, closest to the water jug that had already formed a nervous ring of condensation on the legal pad beside it. No one touched it. Savannah crossed her legs neatly, dressed in soft gray cashmere that looked like it had never known a wrinkle. Mom sat beside her, hands clasped in her lap like she was posing for a portrait. Dad stood near the bookshelf, arms folded, gaze fixed on a framed certificate like it might somehow validate what was about to happen. Mr. Gerhardt cleared his throat. "Thank you all for coming. I'll proceed with the reading." No one spoke. No one had to. We were there because Grandpa had passed away 4 days ago. What we were about to hear was supposed to be the last echo of his voice. The will was read clearly, concisely. There were no surprises for them. But for me, every sentence was a tightening noose. To my beloved granddaughter, Savannah Harper, I leave the Harper family ranch and all associated property. To Thomas and Lynette Harper, I leave the remaining assets within the family trust to support the continuing legacy. There was nothing else. No mention of me. I blinked once. My hands rested in my lap, my bag folded neatly at my feet. Inside it, the envelope from Columbia still sat, unopened after all these years, more symbol now than document. A talisman from a version of the world that might have turned out differently. "That's it?" I said quietly. Mr. Gerhardt looked at me, lips pressed thin. "That's the full document on file. Signed and notarized 3 months ago." Savannah didn't turn her head. She adjusted her bracelet like this was just another meeting. Dad cleared his throat. "It's not personal, Elise. It's tradition. The land has always passed to the eldest." "I'm the eldest, Tom," I said. He ignored the correction. Mom added, "You have your life, sweetheart. Law, independence. This just makes sense." I opened my mouth, then closed it. Arguing would change nothing. This had been decided long ago, behind doors I'd never been allowed through. Savannah finally spoke. "There's a condo. In Cherry Creek. Fully furnished. It's yours if you want it." That was worse than silence. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the small brass key Grandpa had given me when I was 16. He hadn't said what it opened, just that it was mine. I placed it on the table in front of me. No one asked what it was for. No one moved to touch it. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Gerhardt," I said, standing. No one followed me out. The hallway outside the office was colder than I remembered, even for August. My heels clicked too loudly against the marble floor. I stopped at the elevator, jaw clenched so tight I thought my molars might crack. That's when I heard Dad's voice through the door that hadn't quite closed. Let's just hope Savannah doesn't mess this up. It wasn't comfort. It wasn't assurance. It was confirmation. In the parking lot, I climbed into my car and shut the door. The silence inside was cavernous. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. One unsent message still sat in my drafts. Grandpa, if you ever need someone to handle the trust documents, I can fly back this weekend. Just say the word. My finger hovered over the screen. Then I hit delete. Just like that, the last flicker of loyalty was gone. I spent 7 years building a life they didn't know and didn't care, existed. And now they were on my porch with a teddy bear. The backyard pulsed with soft laughter and string lights. Paper lanterns swayed above the deck while bubble wands and dinosaur hats dotted the lawn. Hazel's curls bounced as she ran through a trail of confetti Riley had just launched, giggling so hard she nearly fell into the cupcake table. Jude trailed behind with frosting on his cheek and one sock missing, his entire face radiating 4-year-old chaos and joy. This was mine. Our life. Built not with inheritance, but with grit, grocery store coupons, late-night grant proposals, and morning walks to preschool where I carried them both in opposite arms because the stroller broke again. This wasn't the life anyone in my old family ever pictured, and that was exactly why it worked. Riley stood beside me now, one hand balancing a tray of lemonade, the other giving me that look. The one that said, "You're doing okay, even if you don't believe it yet." I kissed their shoulder in response. The old scar on my palm tingled a little from where I'd sliced it rebuilding the kitchen last winter. Proof that everything here had been touched, shaped, earned. Then came the knock. I barely heard it over Jude's scream of triumph as he claimed the last balloon sword. But Riley did. Their brow furrowed, not alarmed, just alert. "I'll get it," I said, brushing frosting from my apron. The front porch light flicked on with a soft hum. I opened the door. They were standing there. Dad in a navy blazer, Mom in a pale yellow blouse she probably thought made her look warmer than she was. In his hands, he held a teddy bear with a gold ribbon, stiff and new. She clutched a gift bag with a silver bow. Neither of them said anything at first. My stomach didn't drop. My heart didn't race. I simply blinked. "Happy birthday," Mom said eventually, her voice a little too bright. "To the kids, of course." "Their names are Hazel and Jude," I replied. My voice was even, but my fingers curled slightly around the doorframe. "We heard," Dad started, then faltered. "Savannah's been going through some difficulties." I waited. The night air carried the faint scent of vanilla cake and citronella. Mom offered a small, rehearsed smile. "We thought we'd stop by, just for a minute. Maybe see the grandson?" "They're twins," I said flatly. Riley appeared behind me, silent, a steady presence. Dad nodded once, like he hadn't really heard me. "We thought maybe, with everything going on, you might want to talk." I didn't answer. Not immediately. I studied them. Every line, every practiced expression. The shoes too polished for casual. The hair too perfect for spontaneity. The same posture they'd worn the day they told me the condo was the best they could offer. "I see," I said finally. There was nothing to feel. No warmth, no rage, just recognition. Like spotting a blueprint for a house you no longer wanted to build. Mom looked past me toward the living room. "We didn't mean to intrude. Just wanted to reconnect." Behind them, headlights pulled away. Nina's car. She'd come earlier, holding a nervous smile and a quiet bombshell. "Savannah's company is being investigated for federal fraud. IRS, maybe even FBI. It's real." She hadn't said more. She didn't have to. Now it all made sense. The timing, the teddy bear, the fragile pleasantries, the sudden interest. I breathed in the moment. Me, standing on a porch I paid for. Inside, two kids, one partner, a backyard full of honest laughter. And here were the ghosts, wearing ribbons. "You can sit on the porch," I said. They blinked. "The kids are sleeping." They brought tulips and a teddy bear and smiled like 7 years of silence could be undone with a gift shop apology. I let the screen door click shut behind me as I stepped onto the porch with the tea tray. The cups rattled just slightly against the saucers as I set them down on the small mosaic table between the chairs. Steam curled up and away into the cool May evening. My parents sat with stiff posture, legs crossed, gifts balanced on their laps like fragile trophies. The porch still held remnants of the party, bits of streamer caught in the rose bush, a deflated balloon bobbing gently against the step. The breeze tugged at it all as if trying to clear the scene, make room for something new. I took the chair closest to the door, not as an invitation, but as a boundary. "How's Hazel?" Mom asked first, her voice high and tight. "And Jude?" "They're asleep," I said. "You just missed them." "A shame," Dad muttered, glancing toward the living room window. "Bet they're bright kids, lot of Harper in them." "They're their own people," I replied. "They don't owe legacy to a name." That earned a flicker in his jaw, subtle but visible. Mom busied herself adjusting the tulips in her lap, as if the arrangement had betrayed her somehow. "The house is lovely," she offered. "So warm. It has your touch." "Riley built the fence last summer," I said. "I tiled the kitchen myself. The kids picked the colors for their room. Hazel wanted lavender. Jude changed his mind halfway through painting, so now it's half green, half pirate map." Polite chuckles. Hollow ones. I didn't return them. Silence expanded for a moment. I let it. Silence wasn't awkward for me anymore. It was just space. Then I asked, "Are you here because Savannah failed?" Dad blinked. Mom tilted her head, smile faltering. "Elise, it's not like that. Savannah's going through a rough patch. Things happen. We just thought—" "You thought what?" I asked. "That after you erased me from your lives, from Grandpa's will, from every conversation, I'd be the easy one to come back to?" Dad leaned forward, elbows on knees. "We didn't erase you. You chose to walk away." "No," I said evenly. "I chose to stop sitting at a table that was never mine." Mom's lips pressed together. "You said Savannah led and I supported. That was the role, right? She shines, I steady. She speaks, I listen." "That was the design," I said. "But the thing is, I stopped playing by that design a long time ago, and I'm not here to rewrite it so you can sleep better." "You're being dramatic," Dad said, with that tired laugh he used to diffuse conflict. "We're just trying to reconnect. It's been years." "Exactly," I said. "Years. Not a word. Not a visit. Not a single question about how I was doing. And now that Savannah's business is tanking, now you show up, with tea roses and plush animals like their currency." Mom reached for her cup but didn't lift it. Her hands trembled slightly. I watched the ripple in the liquid catch the porch light. "You don't miss me," I said, voice low but sharp. "You miss your legacy." Dad opened his mouth, closed it again. I stood. The tea remained untouched. The teddy bear rested awkwardly against the chair arm, its tag still dangling. Mom looked up at me, eyes wide but dry. "This visit is over." ChatGPT, Jun, Noi. They gave everything to her, I told Nina. But when the ship sank, they still expected me to throw a lifeline. The sunlight at Luna Bean always felt gentler in the mornings, slanting across the old oak floors, catching on the dust motes like they were floating confetti. The barista gave me a nod as I walked in, already reaching for the mug with my name in gold paint. I liked that about this place. They remembered people without needing reasons. Nina sat in the back corner, laptop open, fingers laced tight under her chin. Her nails were bare now, chewed down, something I hadn't seen since college finals. She didn't smile as I approached, just pushed a folder across the table and said, "It's worse than I thought." I slid into the seat and flipped it open. Page after page, balance sheets, letters from the IRS, a court summons stamped in red. Savannah's signature appeared more than once, fluid, perfect, unapologetic. She has 4 active lawsuits, 2 for breach of contract, 1 for misappropriation of funds. Nina tapped the screen of her tablet, scrolling through a spreadsheet. This one shows 10 vendors still unpaid. One of them's threatening to publish the invoices. "And the accounts?" I asked. "Frozen," she said. "The trust is under review. IRS flagged it last quarter. She moved money to a Nevada LLC, then to Panama. Badly." I sipped my coffee. It tasted like cinnamon and a little too much truth. "She was never subtle," I murmured. Nina nodded. She thought charisma was a cover for everything. There was a pause. She hesitated, then turned her screen toward me again. A chat window. "Savannah Harper. Don't tell Elise. She'll gloat." I let the words sit, let them mean what they meant. "She always assumed I was watching," I said. "Were you?" "No," I said. "I stopped watching a long time ago." Nina leaned back. "Then why'd you come today?" I think I wanted to confirm that I didn't need to come. I looked around. People ordered bagels. Students hunched over laptops. Outside, the sun kept rising like it always did. She exhaled. "There's something else." Of course there was. She opened an email thread, scrolled to a highlighted section. Thomas reached out to Harper's old PR firm. He's pitching a renewal arc, wants to position the family as unified, reframe the story. And you, I'm the safe one. I finished for her. The fallback, the piece they forgot they'd need later. Nina's voice softened. "They're trying to write you back in." I looked down at the photo I'd set as my lock screen. Hazel and Jude in the backyard last week, covered in chalk and joy. Riley had taken it right after Jude declared himself king of dirt, and Hazel corrected him, "You mean co-king." "They'll never be someone's backup plan," I said. That was my climax. Not a scream, not a slam of a door. Just a line drawn so clearly that even ghosts would have to stop at the threshold. My phone buzzed. A new email, subject line clear as glass. From Valerie Chen. Subject, contact request from Thomas Harper, redistributing family trust for next generation. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Some inherited houses, others inherit the silence between conversations. I'm done passing down either. The lamplight cast a soft gold over the desk, making the folder labeled Chen Legal glow like it had its own quiet conviction. I'd cleared everything else. No mugs, no receipts, no pens uncapped and rolling toward the edge. Just the folder, my laptop, and a stillness that had taken me 30 years to earn. Riley stood in the doorway, arms crossed loosely, saying nothing. He knew I didn't need company. I needed presence. And his was enough. I clicked open the PDF for the no contact order first. Valerie had made it clean. Precise language, ironclad clauses, no ambiguity. Names listed in full. Terms unshakable. Then the estate severance. More delicate, more symbolic. It read like a boundary shaped in legalese. No future claim, no contingent trust, no inheritance by proxy. The Harper name would end with their signatures, not bleed into mine. I reviewed every word slowly, deliberately, and when I reached the bottom, I attached both documents to a new email. 2. Valerie Chen. Subject. Finalize, severance and contact. Block attachments, no contact, eharper.pdf. Estate severance, eharper.pdf. BCC. Myself. The cursor hovered. I pressed send. 37 seconds later, Valerie replied, "Confirmed. All rights severed. They no longer have legal claim or access. Sleep well." I stared at those last 2 words. Sleep well. It hadn't occurred to me how little I'd truly done that. Not for years. Not without carrying some dull ache in the marrow. Not without wondering if I'd missed something, misunderstood, misremembered a moment where I might have been loved. But love doesn't erase people from wills, or rewrite them in only when it's convenient. I rose from the desk. Down the hallway, the night had softened everything. The hum of the monitor in the twins' room, the faint click of a ceiling fan. I pushed the door open quietly and stepped inside. Hazel was sprawled diagonally across her bed, one leg kicked out of the blanket like a small rebellion. Jude was the opposite. Neatly tucked, still clutching the stuffed rabbit Riley had stitched back together last fall. I knelt between them, smoothed Hazel's hair off her face, tugged Jude's blanket a little higher. "You'll never wonder if you were enough," I whispered. Neither stirred, but the words stayed. Not for them. For me. In the office again, I pulled up my contacts. One by one. Thomas Harper, Lynette Harper, Savannah Harper. Delete. 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 I paused at the old email folder labeled Harper. A strange museum of newsletters, invitations I'd never attended, updates never meant for me. Select all. Delete. Then, empty trash. Last step. I uploaded the legal documents to a private cloud vault, labeled the folder roots. My phone buzzed. "Nina Morales. You made the right call. I'm doing it next." I smiled, not for vindication, but for the simple, radical peace of being finished. I used to think being the quiet one meant being strong, that if I just waited long enough, kept doing the right thing, someone would finally look over and say, "You matter too." But silence, I learned, is not the same as dignity. And patience can become a prison when you're waiting for someone else's permission to be seen. For years, I believed my value would be recognized once I achieved something they couldn't ignore. A scholarship, a degree, stability. I chased their approval like it was the final stamp on my existence. Even after the will reading, even after being erased in black and white legal ink, I still asked myself if maybe I'd misunderstood. Maybe I hadn't been enough. But the truth was harsher and simpler. They knew I was capable. That's why they ignored me. Because I wasn't chaotic. I wasn't the one who needed constant saving. I was steady, and in this family, steady meant expendable. When they showed up on my porch, bearing tulips and a teddy bear, they weren't offering love. They were circling back to reclaim control, hoping to reattach themselves to the only branch that hadn't withered in their rot. They weren't here for reconciliation. They were here for reputation. It took me one look to know that. And it took me one night to end it. The legal severance wasn't an act of vengeance. It was an act of freedom. For me. For my children. For the generations that will come after who deserve love that doesn't hinge on performance or proximity to power. I didn't scream. I didn't post a dramatic monologue. I sent an email. I deleted a contact list. I backed up a document. And then I walked into my children's room and whispered something no one had ever whispered to me. "You are enough. You've always been enough." This isn't a story of revenge. It's a story of reclaiming. Reclaiming my name, my voice, my peace. I was never theirs to silence. And now I am mine. Elise Harper never raised her voice. But somehow the silence she chose at the end was louder than all the years they tried to mute her. In a world where betrayal often wears a smile and control hides behind family ties, she rewrote the rules. Not with rage, but with resolve. Her justice didn't arrive in courtrooms or through confrontations. It came through boundaries, through the quiet power of walking away and meaning it. The ones who once dismissed her came back only when their golden child fell. But by then, she had already built a life that didn't need their permission. Or their presence. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late. But it resonates powerfully once it's heard. Because when the invisible daughter finally writes her own legacy, those who erased her lose the power to narrate anything ever again. And that is my story. Not a loud revenge. No shouting matches. No slammed doors. Just a girl who once waited to be seen, and finally realized she didn't have to wait anymore. When I signed the legal documents severing ties with my family, the feeling wasn't anger. It was quiet, a kind of quiet I'd been craving for most of my life. No more emails I didn't want to open. No more late-night phone calls reminding me I was still the fallback, the fixer, the background support while Savannah got to shine. I'm not telling this story to be pitied. I'm telling it because if you, the person watching this, have ever felt like you weren't enough just because you weren't the golden child, I want you to know, you're not alone. Maybe you've sat through family dinners, listening quietly while they celebrated someone else's achievements, while your own sacrifices went unnoticed. Maybe you've wondered if anyone would ever ask, "Are you okay?" without expecting something in return. Maybe you've spent years questioning, "Do I matter?" If so, let me say this to you. You matter. You are enough. Not because of how much you do, not because you outshine anyone, but simply because you exist. Setting boundaries, choosing yourself, protecting your peace. It's not selfish. Sometimes it's the kindest thing you can do for yourself. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this story. Thank you for listening to a chapter of my life I once thought I'd bury forever. And if this story touched you, if you've battled the quiet heartbreak of being unseen or unappreciated by your own family, I'd love to hear your story too. Feel free to share it in the comments below. Let's create a space where none of us feels invisible anymore. And if you know someone who's struggling with the same kind of pain, someone trying to find their way back to themselves after years of being overlooked, send them this video. You never know. They might need to hear this more than you think. Finally, if this resonated with you, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Because here, we talk about standing up. We talk about rewriting our narratives. And we talk about no longer asking for permission. To simply be who we are. Thank you. Truly.